Murderer! 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 Murderer!
What do you want?
I want you to join me.
Just a cough. Doctors are wrong.
You can't force me to go to that awful place.
Max.
Follow me into death. That is why I am here, Max, to end your suffering.
Max. Time for you to join me.
In 1959, a young Henry discovered he had remarkable psychokinetic abilities and could alter the perception of others. Realizing he could make his own rules, he became motivated by a nihilistic and cynical philosophy, using his powers to psychologically torture his family. Eventually, he killed his mother and sister, framing his father, which drove him to madness. His God complex drew the interest of Dr. Martin Brenner, who took him to Hawkins National Laboratory to be studied. There, Henry was designated 001, becoming the laboratory's first test subject. Knowing what he was capable of, Brenner implanted Soteria in Henry's neck, a device that suppresses powers and tracks his every movement. Now essentially a prisoner at Hawkins, Henry became one of the orderlies that aided Brenner. The doctor went on to replicate Henry's powers in a number of test subjects, who also had their movements confined to the labs. In 1979, Henry tricked Eleven into removing his Soteria chip with her abilities. In a fit of rage, he used his restored powers to brutally murder the other test subjects and try to do the same to Eleven. However, Eleven stood her ground and ultimately overpowered him, sending him to the Upside Down, where he gradually transformed into the being known as Vecna. At first, he believed Eleven had sent him to his death, to Purgatory, but he soon realized he was somewhere new. He reappeared in 1986 and began tormenting people in Hawkins, using their deaths to open a series of gates between this world and the Upside Down. Our heroes began investigating the murders, nicknaming the murderer Vecna after a character from Dungeons & Dragons that ascended from human king to god. Vecna demonstrated a mastery of telepathy, learning to connect himself to the Mind Flayer and Demogorgon during his years in the Upside Down. This amplified his power, allowing him to telepathically reach across time and space to haunt the residents of Hawkins, despite existing within a completely separate dimension. Vecna can see into the minds of others, search their memories for information, and use this knowledge to plague them into submission. He can manipulate their perception, making them hallucinate. When he's frightened them to the point of complete vulnerability, he entrances them within their own minds, making them experience vivid hallucinations and powerful nightmares set in places of terror that usually hold pain and trauma for them. While his ability to manipulate one's perception of reality is strongest in the dream world, he can also create realistic illusions in a person's waking state. Through his connection with the Mind Flayer, Vecna is able to astral project, casting his consciousness outside of his physical body to explore the private lives of people in Hawkins. He's able to inflict minor forms of physical injuries on his victims, such as nosebleeds and severe headaches, which is the first step to weakening his targets. The powerful expulsion of energy released from his ritualistic murders and the deep psionic connection with his victims enables him to open wormholes between the Upside Down and Hawkins. If that wasn't terrifying enough, Vecna has the ability to control and manipulate solid matter with his mind. Initially, his telekinetic power was limited to lightweight objects, but through practice, he can now exert influence over larger objects, seen in his proclivity to levitate victims before breaking every bone in their body and crushing their eyes into the back of their skull. Since his banishment, Vecna developed the ability to hastily regenerate his cells at will, enabling him to rapidly heal from all non-fatal injuries. Minor cuts and wounds heal immediately, while greater injuries like broken bones take a bit longer. His regenerative healing factor extends to immunity from most toxins and diseases. However, Vecna does have weaknesses. Excessive use of his psionic abilities without rest results in deadly levels of fatigue. Henry admits he almost died as a child after using too much power, which put him in a coma for weeks. In the Memories of Eleven, it is shown that psionic resistance to Vecna is possible if the will of the other psychic is strong enough. Additionally, sound waves created by rhythmic musical frequencies can reach sensitive centers of the human brain that speech cannot, temporarily opening the barrier between the real world and the dream world where Vecna imprisons his victims. Henry was motivated by nihilism and ego, wanting to reform the world to his own design. He believed humanity to be corrupted, power-hungry parasites with no regard for the world and other living beings, and had no mercy for them. He found gratification from killing and inflicting pain, reveling in tormenting emotionally unstable teenagers by making them relive their traumas before slowly breaking their bones. His ultimate goal is to unleash the malevolence and corrupting nature of the Upside Down into the real world. Every time he kills someone, it opens a gate between the Upside Down and Hawkins. Brenner uses the analogy of a dam to explain the metaphorical barrier between the two worlds. One crack is harmless, but enough of them will destabilize the integrity of the entire wall. Henry only has to kill 4 people to destroy the wall, which is why his clock always chimes 4 times. In a coordinated offensive, our heroes execute a cunning plan to bring him down by engaging him from all fronts around the world. As Vecna jumps into the mind of Max, 11 joins him, and they engage in an epic battle. Henry comes very close to defeating her, but, assisted by Mike's voice telling 11 that he loves her, she gains enough willpower to blast him away from Max before he completes the dark ritual. The group then burns Henry with Molotov cocktails, weakening him and forcing him out of Max's mind. Licking his wounds, Vecna retreats to the outskirts of the Upside Down to regain his strength, confirmed by Will, who, through his Mind Flayer experience, has a connection to Henry's mind. Unfortunately, it's revealed that Vecna was able to open up the 4th gate needed to rupture the barrier between the Upside Down and Hawkins, killing many residents and displacing more. The 5th and final season will likely revolve around 11 and Henry, who has been the one pulling the strings the entire time. He wants to use 11 as a dimension key and had enlisted both the Demogorgons and the Mind Flayer to achieve this, meaning that 11 must be the one to defeat him once and for all.